Escapism.
Hello, you still in there?
My name's Lena, and I've been indoors too long. Not only have I been indoors too long, but I've started thinking about things too hard. The news cycle has become as relentless as my menstrual cycle. Somewhere out there, the sea levels are still rising. Don't know which one of my neighbours is using my wheelie bin, but it's really starting to get to me. And it's all become a bit much. So what I did was I whacked out some of my favourite childhood films. Escapism. Yeah, they're all about the climate crisis.
Are they though?
They are.
Really?
Genuinely, I shit you not. And because I can't unsee it, I want to make sure from this day forth that you can't either. Now, do I believe that the directors of these films genuinely intended to warn us about the climate crisis? No, probably not. But the films I was watching in the early and late 90s reflect the conscious and subconscious anxieties of the time. And wow, were we anxious about energy. Now, I might be talking out of my arse, and I don't wish to shit on my hands and clap into your day, but how about you watch the video and let me know if I need to go and collect my marbles. Here we go. So there are the obvious ones when it comes to 90s films that might be related to the environment. We're talking Free Willy, Fern Gully, Fly Away Home, but I knew to avoid those ones if I didn't want to think about the climate crisis. You couldn't get me. There were some unexpected ones, the first of which being Jumanji. Jumanji is a film that follows the unearthing of an ancient, dangerous game that is uncovered in the building of yet another factory in an already industrialized city. It's a literal Pandora's box that is brought to the surface because we have been digging in to the ground. And it is found by Alan, who is the not insignificantly placed son of the factory owner, the heir to the means of production, and when the heir messes with this ancient buried game, he is literally swallowed up by the wilderness. This is a time when Monopoly is on the rise, the game Monopoly, but also the path to financial ruin Monopoly. And this part of the film is set in 1969, a time when the fear of livelihoods becoming a game of checks and balances was a very real terror. Interestingly, the whole catalyst for Alan finding the game is that a black employee who works in the factory comes up with an incredible innovation of trainers. The white heir to the throne accidentally shreds his innovation and the black man is fired for it, which probably deserves a whole essay in itself. Alan plays the game. It's then followed by what can only be termed biblical curses, plagues that come on the earth. The first curse, bats, the famous carriers of disease that can cause things like, I don't know, pandemics. And then Alan is subsequently trapped in the game, seemingly as a punishment for messing with the forces of nature, while his town and his father becomes run down by the failed promise of capitalism. His family is destroyed, the factory is destroyed, and then, in 1995, Kirsten Dunst and her brother appear as if by magic to resurface the game and ultimately, accidentally, bring Alan back into the more sanitized modern world, followed by murder hornets. Vines take over the whole house, turning everything that they've built back into a jungle. I don't know why I thought this was going to be such a relaxing film when I chose it, to be honest. The game releases monkeys to run riot in the city, and when it's questioned, like, what's the problem with this? Somebody's like, can you imagine what monkeys are going to do to the ecosystem around here? Like, one of the big anxieties isn't just that there are like elephants and rhinos trampling humans and cars and basically anything there in their sight. It's also the long-term effect of releasing jungle animals into an environment it is not yet adapted or designed for. The younger child, Peter, actually devolves into a monkey, which is again supposed to be really terrifying, and I guess chimes with the idea of being worried that not joining the Industrial Revolution, not joining the future, means that we are not evolving or progressing as we should. There is also this terrifying colonial coded hunter who has no regard for human life and is like the only human scary thing to come out of Jumanji. And I guess I'd also symbolically tie him to this fear of Jumanji being everything that strikes back at us when we open Pandora's box, one of those things being the colonial atrocities that have caused part of the climate crisis. And there's also a really funny comment which I think probably is just like a great echo to how vegan and vegetarians were treated in the 90s, is that somebody questions why Robin Williams is dressed this way and Judy replies, he's vegetarian. That's the whole explanation. That's the tweet. Thanks, Judy. In the end, the characters' plot lines are resolved because of this thing that Alan's dad said to him growing up. You should always face what you're afraid of. Things are able to be reversed because of that mantra, and in facing their fears, some of the equilibriums are allowed to be rebalanced. However, the story of Jumanji isn't over because it washes up on another shore. And the end of the film is two other children finding the game. So if getting rid of a deadly thing by putting it out of sight and out of mind and throwing it into the sea, only for it to wash up on the shores of somebody else and still be something incredibly toxic, isn't a metaphor for the climate crisis, I don't know what is. Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. Be still my beating hairy heart. We join two monsters living through an energy crisis. Not only that, but they work at the company that supplies the energy. So not only are their own jobs on the line, but there's always establishing shots of their whole normal world being run on scare energy. Can I just say the concept of this whole film is still so incredibly good. The iconic door scenes, I'm so mad I didn't come up with it myself. But the basic premise is that children's screams generate energy that monsters can utilize in Monster World. So they go into the human world to collect the screams and power their lives. However, children are becoming less scared of things, and they realise that their power sources have become unsustainable. The monsters themselves are even walking to work because they're so scared of how little energy there is left in the world. The primary source of energy is fear, and the manager, who runs the factory and has inherited it through generational wealth, insists that there is no other way. Complete with oil energy adjacent propaganda like we scare because we care. They're also terrified of children. The boss asks, is there anything more dangerous than a human child? In large numbers, probably not. Also, baby's carbon footprint is like way bigger than Bigfoot's at this point, so agreed, terrifying. It is only when Sully and Mike meet Boo that they discover that there is actually an alternative way to supply energy to their world. It turns out by bringing Boo joy that they realise laughter is actually way more powerful than screaming. Joy is more profitable than fear. It's actually 10 times more powerful, and it inspires the biggest industrial pivot in monster history. Boo also inspires a behavioural change in monsters. Sully realises the systemic effects of his job on the real people behind who he scares, and he starts to see himself honestly for the first time, and he doesn't like what he sees. So he changes his own behaviour and he changes his industry. And isn't that our world too? We have a fear-based employment system where we're like, you have to work, otherwise you will die. There is no alternative, just keep ploughing on into oblivion. But what if we're harvesting the wrong kind of stuff in the wrong kind of way, at the wrong kind of cost? Maybe it's time to turn to the oil industry and say, it looks like you're out of a job. I have this feeling that Roz is kind of like the Naomi Klein of the world, like quietly working on these long bits of paperwork to prove how systemically corrupt everything is. And I can also imagine her ending a book like this.
Your stunned silence is very reassuring.
Next, we need to talk about Hook. By the way, thank you to those of you who have been paying attention and noticed that I am trying to dress in the vague theme of the film I'm talking about. It by you, I feel truly seen. Hook is a 90s film intrinsically linked to the Victorian story of Peter Pan. We meet Peter Pan in his middle age, having forgotten who he is and run away from his natural, untainted by the Industrial Revolution, Neverland, and completely divorced into the superficial realms of capitalist London. This film is most notable perhaps for having less subconscious and more conscious ties to the climate crisis because it was released in 1991, the year during and after a lot of new climate change research was published and still being like emotionally absorbed by the public. Peter has grown into what all young lefty liberals are warned they will grow into, a Tory boomer. Da, da, da. Worse than that, a lawyer, who in theory now is supposed to be a person who distributes justice, not by the sword, but rather paperwork. And he's also fallen into the capitalist trap of ignoring his children, ignoring his pets, constantly being on the phone and guided by the pursuit of money. He is the head without the heart, the facts without the feelings, the rational without the romance, and he's harming everyone around him. It's only when his children discover where he really came from, this world that is essentially socialist, shares everything, lives surrounded by nature and according to their means, and their only protagonist being Hook, who believes that humans are inherently evil, so why not lean into that and kill and steal at any cost, which is actually arguably quite factually inaccurate. Read more about that here, Justice for Pirates, but according to J.M. Barrie, this is what a pirate is, sure. When Hook captures his children, he's not just using the physical capture, he wants to capture their minds. He's trying to get them in the gilded cage of their choosing, and one of the sons is taken in by it. He's like, oh my god, what if being a pirate is the only way? Hook is literally probably just capitalism itself at this point. Convincing the children that the boomers are evil, which is again is something we should probably not assume. And when Peter returns to Neverland to save his children, he finds that Rufio, who after Michael Flatley was my sexual awakening, is the new leader of the Lost Boys. In the original Peter Pan book, there are some definite weird undercurrents of Indigenous representation, and while I think the film does sway away from that and doesn't really include that as much, and I love the fact that Rufio is the leader of the pack, it also is a massive shame that he is the one that has to die. I also wrote something in my notes that I don't completely understand now, but I've written, hyperfemininity in mermaids used as a misogynistic tool to symbolise a breakdown of the binary. So if you have any idea what I mean by that, enjoy. So there are some definite problems with this film, but what made me link it to the climate crisis the most was the crocodile. Tick tock, tick tock. We don't have much time left. The curse of him, capitalism, will be, direct quote from Hook, flung at the doors of your children and your children's children's children. The crocodile is what Hook is most afraid of. The crocodile is the harsh, extreme part of nature coming to hunt down Hook, capitalism. His time is up. And if the Lost Boys don't look like Gen Z on a Friday climate strike, then I don't know what's real. The morals of the story being, follow your shadow. It doesn't forget who you are. Everyone needs a mother nature very badly. And the Lost Boys believe that all grown-ups are pirates. I mean, where's the lie? But Peter is there to represent that adults can be part of the solution too. You don't lose your instinct for socialism, your instinct for nature, your instinct for community and honor, however long you've been one of the pirates.
So what do you think? Am I going mad? Am I?
I didn't think so. Regardless of the fact that this was supposed to be an escape from me rewatching some of my favourite films, it did really help me to reflect on some of the systemic issues that are stopping us from addressing the climate crisis. And it almost felt encouraging to know that it's really connected with every other problem we have as human beings. If you'd like to learn more about the climate crisis, I've made a series called A Guide to Positive Panic on my channel, which I'm going to be adding to even more as we go on. So subscribe if you want to be around for that. These videos, particularly these ones actually, because they make no real sense and have literally no commercial value, but I feel are important, are made possible by the Gumption Club, who are a beautiful band of patrons who support the channel by tipping me per video, and in exchange I add them to a lovely little Facebook group where we hang out like almost every day, chatting about things we're going through, freaking out about the climate crisis, but also, you know, talking about eyeliner, swapping clothes, sharing cat pictures, that kind of thing. So if you're interested, there's a link below where you can find out more about that. If the news cycle is becoming overwhelming for you, I have a newsletter that comes out every Friday. One, letting you know about the videos I upload, but also picking out a couple of things from the internet that I've seen that I thought are cool. So if you're trying to spend less time doom scrolling, I would recommend that. It's completely free. Take it from me, take it from my veins. As always, thank you so much for watching. Frogs Nog out.